Hello, my name is Annette DeLu, and you are listening to The Heart of You. You are listening to episode 50. Today, I am interviewing Melissa Bellefontaine. Melissa is a medical Qigong instructor, a practitioner of higher realm healing, and she also facilitates Illuminate retreats. She lives and works in Chesapeake, Nova Scotia. Melissa, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Annette.
So let's dive right into your spiritual journey. What I like to always ask my guests is to give us a brief overview of your spiritual awakening story.
Right. My spiritual journey began in 2006. It's very vivid for me because it happened after a huge trauma that had taken place in my life. At the time, I was late 30s, raising my 4 children with my husband, who had been my high school sweetheart. And we had just sold our home. We decided that we were going to build our dream home and build our home into the community where he had been brought up. He had just gone for a short business trip to one of the local provinces, and what should have taken about 20 minutes to reach his job site to his hotel, in that time, he had gone off the road and was killed. I have looked back onto that time. I do believe that it was divine intervention, that it was the time for that, our contract had come to an end, and that we were meant to move in different directions, as difficult a time it was, and still can be.
Yeah.
But when I actually had visited the site where he had gone off, because it was a single car accident, it was just a straight stretch, and there should have been no reason for it to happen. And
wow.
Yeah. And when I did visit that space, there were fox running around in the field. And the fox is very much about tapping into your intuition. And I also used to call him Silver Fox. It was my nickname for him. But after his passing, I really started to delve into the world of spirituality. I was brought up a Catholic growing up, but it didn't really have a lot of meaning to me, really. It was you go to regular mass each week and you sit there and listen, but it didn't really, there wasn't a lot of connection. But shortly after my husband had passed, of course, your mind is just going everywhere. And I had a neighbor who later became a great friend and a teacher. She's a life coach and a Reiki master. And within that 48 hours after my husband passing, she was able to take me into an experience where I entered the void, and it was as though we were there, we were together, and I felt the embrace that between myself and my husband. And she had explained to me that I could have this anytime I wanted.
Wow.
I could go back to that space. And so I started to explore different forms of energy work and looking at our reality in different ways. And up to this point, I had been very fearful of flying, and I began to embrace new experiences. I embraced travel. Flew off to Colorado and learned about matrix energetics and a path, stepping stones, moving in, learning about quantum touch and reconnective healing. And all of that brought me to Qi Gong, which is my passion and what I enjoy sharing with the people in my community.
Beautiful. So you mentioned a couple of things that I would like you to sort of get into the definition of, if you don't mind. First, we're going to obviously talk about the definition of Qigong. What is Qigong? Because that is the main reason why we are here on this episode.
Right.
However, you did mention a quantum touch. You mentioned matrix healing. Can you kind of explain what you mean by those two terms?
Sure. And for me, there's a lot of different types of energy work. For me, experiencing each of these, it's a different feeling I get, because people have asked like what's the difference between Reiki and higher realm healing, and it's often, I will see different colors with the crystal realm might come in, and it's just, it can be, they're all loving energies because they all tap in, come from source, but it's just a different feel from the energy for me. With matrix energetics, that was one of the first. Well, and Dr. Bartlett doesn't really call it a healing modality. He says it's a shift in consciousness. So moving from the left brain, the linear thinking, to the right brain where there's the creativity. And he suggests, even dropping down further into the heart center where there's infinite possibilities. There's just shifts that can happen instantaneously. There are healings. It may happen instantly. It may take place over a bit of time. But my experience when I went for this weekend training in Colorado, seeing Dr. Bartlett up in front of everyone speaking, he would place his hands in areas. He would call it a 2-point technique, and just, bringing your awareness into one spot. But then the other hand was where all possibilities were available to you. And that's where that shift would take place, the change in the body. And oftentimes you'd see people falling to the floor in laughter. And
wow,
I still don't quite understand it, but I experienced it. And, it was amazing. It happened, and it happened throughout the whole room. The energy was so high from all that synergy of all the people that were there.
Right. And that's something that I think is true about a lot of the energy work that we all do, is that we only understand like a small portion of what it is that we're actually doing, right? Because we're only seeing it from one or two perspectives, whereas seeing how that energy works when you're on the other side is going to be a totally different perspective, right? So we know that it works. We see the proof of what it's actually doing, but how much do we really understand how it works, right?
Absolutely. Trusting, because we don't see it when we flick the light switch. We don't see that energy moving from the light to the light switch, but we know it's happening. So
right.
A belief.
Exactly. Well, I mean, if you think about, we take for granted now how we connect via the internet. Like right now, you're in Nova Scotia, I'm in Paris, France. Like, we're able to record this podcast, and yet we don't question how it's happening, right? We just know that it works.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So let's dive into the definition of Qigong. So where does it come from? What is it exactly? And tell us all the sort of wonderful details of Qigong.
Sure. So Qigong is a 5,000-year-old practice that began in China. The word Qigong, if you take it apart, Qi means energy or life force, and Gong means work. So when we put them together, it's cultivation of life force energy. It is one of the branches of traditional Chinese medicine. And it's often been referred to as acupuncture without the needles, because instead of the needles, we are using breath work, we're using visualizations, we're using body movements and postures to help guide the energy through the body, to help release blockages through the meridians or the energy pathways.
When you are moving that energy out of the body or through the body, what is the basic practice in order to do that?
Grounding is very important in medical Qigong, probably all the forms of Qigong, because there's various forms. But we're focusing on our bodies being an antenna to the energies above us and the energies below. So we're through our breath work, we're bringing in the energy in through the soles of our feet. Kidney 1, it's the beginning point of the kidney meridian, and down through the crown of our head, known as the Ballway point. So we want to bring those energies in to allow them to mix within the body and move throughout to reduce excesses or to help to revitalize us, to prevent the deficiencies from happening within those meridians. We in medical Qigong, we use a typically a breathing practice known as fire path breathing.
Okay.
We connect with the earth energy. And this is where the visualization comes in, because we visualize a beautiful orb at the center of the earth. And we draw in that energy. We create some tap roots down to the earth. We draw up through those tap roots, up through the body. And our focus is to fill the dantian, our abdomen. This is our bio battery, recharging station, if you would. We want to fill that area so that if there are any, we're feeling depleted of our energy, that we can draw on that energy. We want to fill the kidneys, because that's the home of our ancestral qi. This is our Ming Men area. And we just want to bring that energy up what's called the microcosmic orbit. So you bring the energy up your spine, governing vessel, and down the front of your body, conception vessel. And we want to fill those two channels with qi, and so it's maintained in the body.
So that's in a practice of maintaining the energy, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So what happens when you have imbalances in the body? Would you do the same practice, or is there a different technique?
There's a lot of different exercises. In Medical QiGong, we focus on different protocols each month, which are aimed at different body systems and different organs. So right now we're moving into winter, and this is the time of the water energy, because in our bodies are seen as a microcosm of the world, the macrocosmic orbit or world. In nature, you see the energies playing out we have a cycle, begins with wood, we have fire, we have earth, we have metal, we have water, and they all flow through a regulating cycle that helps to support one another. We also have a controlling cycle if you have deficiency or excesses. But in general, if you're feeling an imbalance in one of those areas, we can tap into some of the practices. So in winter, we're looking at the bones, the skeletal system. We're looking at our brain development. We're looking at the kidneys and the bladder, those areas. So we have sounds that we can use along with colors for each season to help to regulate the organs and the body systems. So it's
wonderful.
Yes.
Is this something that we can actually do sort of towards the end of this episode, is possibly go through a meditation?
We could, and we could also maybe even do the 6 healing sounds, because we can visualize the colors and we can make the sounds. And this would be a nice regulating practice for each of the energies.
Okay, that sounds wonderful. We can do that sort of towards the end of the session, because I'd like to ask you a few more questions before we get into that. And then people can sort of settle down and get into a really good position to get into a meditation and to be able to receive. Does that sound good?
Perfect.
Wonderful. When it comes to Qigong, you mentioned that there are various different types of Qigong. And I took a weekend seminar here in Paris on Qigong. So I got to learn a lot of the basics. It wasn't specifically medical Qigong. It was just Qigong in general, how to move the energy, how to run a fire cycle, how to run a water cycle, how to transmute energy and move it through your body. What is the difference between sort of learning Qigong and medical Qigong? Is there a difference between the two?
I would say the biggest difference is, as I mentioned, that we have seasonal training protocols to support each of the organs and the body systems. Because really, I mean, it's all energy work. And I believe in the end, it's about health and well-being.
Right.
It is, because we use the breath work, we use the visualization to guide the energy through our bodies and helping to maintain that life force, a nice, strong life force, so that our immune system stays strong. With medical Qigong, as I mentioned, we have our five energies. And so in the spring, we have wood energy, which deals with the tendons and ligaments. And we move into fire energy, which is early summer, and that works on the small muscle groups. And we move into later summer, which is earth energy, and we focus on the large muscle groups. Then we move into metal energy, the fall, which focuses on the respiratory system. So lots of breathing exercises. And in the winter, it's about your bones, the strengthening the bones, increasing and maintaining and increasing bone density. And you're focusing on your brain development. And it's about keeping all the fluids moving in your body, because there's a different fluid for each energy. And because that helps to keep us supple. And, when you look at the young sapling, it's harder to break a sapling because it's nice and supple and it has that life juice flowing through it. So we want to maintain our bodies, that youthfulness. So I would say that's probably the biggest difference with medical Qigong is all the variety and looking at each system individually.
So it sounds like it's a bit more targeted. You're actually being a bit more sort of specific about how you're using the energy and at what times.
Exactly. Because each organ is associated with a different meridian, and they all have a 2-hour window that they're at their peak energy or depleted. And, we can work with that, through acupressure, even to open and, get the free flow of qi moving.
What kind of benefits can somebody expect from doing this type of practice?
There are so many at all levels: physical, mental, emotional, and spiritual levels. Personally, I can tell you that I used to suffer from migraines. Started when I was just a young teenager, and I'll never forget that first one of getting that prism and the excruciating pain in my head. And for years, I unfortunately would take Advil. That was my go-to. It was the only thing that would help.
Right.
But once I started practicing Qigong, and I learned that oftentimes the headaches are associated with the gallbladder meridian, which travels from your head all the way down to your toes. Well, it's the toe beside your baby toe. But when I learned how to open that meridian through particular movements, I rarely take an Advil.
Wow.
Yeah, it's amazing. And as well as some of, the acupressure. I recall when I first started going down to Arizona, and I used to have real sharp pain in my hip. And my older sister had bursitis, and she had gone through the surgery a couple of years before that. And the scar that I saw and the recovery of having to use the crutches, and I didn't want to go through that, but it was very similar to what my sister was experiencing. And I remember asking my master teacher, like, what do I do? And he said, sit. And not on the coat. Sit on the floor and just, opening up that area of your body, your hips. And I don't have pain anymore. I never had to get surgery.
Wow.
I've had people over the years come to me and tell me how their balance and flexibility had increased. I had a youth class at one point, Qigong youth class, and some of the students, before going in for exams or tests, and they would be very apprehensive about going in for their tests, and they would focus on their breath work, and wonderful results. They could go in with a calmness and a focus to get through their tests. So, it's strengthening your bones and your muscles and regulating your emotions and your hormones through some of those healing sounds that we'll explore later on.
Wow.
But just energizing.
Yeah. Along with the breath work and the other sort of energetic techniques that you're using movement, right? Like body movement.
Yes.
In addition to all of these?
Absolutely. Yeah. There are particular sets of movements that are used seasonally.
So is this something that you can help somebody with remotely? Can you do this like over a Zoom call, or do you have to be in person for this type of practice?
No, you could do it over the internet through Zoom or whatnot, because, we see that visualization and, we have the visual, I should say, and we can talk back and forth. So definitely it's something that could take place over the internet.
Wonderful. Do you want to share with us some of the experiences you've had with clients? Like, what are some of the extraordinary things that you have heard through your clients' experience?
So throughout the years, I've had different clients come to me with share their stories, just even from the side of tapping into their intuition. I teach in a group setting, so I've had different clients come up and explain to me how they were able to, when we would be doing our healing sounds, they would actually be able to see those colors, and they were like spider webs that connected every person in the room. So really beginning to develop some intuition. I had a gentleman, an older gentleman, who was dealing with heart issues. And although I don't do a lot of just one-on-one, when situations come up, health concerns, I do tend to change my class around a little bit and include exercises. This gentleman in particular, he became very fearful about doing anything physical. He didn't want to even come to class, but his wife had encouraged him. So just working with the heart meridian and doing some meditations on the heart, he expressed how he had finally, entered this place of calmness, that he was able to come back to class and, enjoy the practices and not feel that, he was going to do more damage to himself. He actually went on to take a trip to Cuba with his wife, and he had shared that they were getting ready one day to go into this boat on a trip. They had I guess they must have been given a glass of wine at the time, and they were stepping into the boat, and he started to trip over this book bag, and he said, "I owe it all to Qigong that, I didn't trip," because, like I said, he was 70s, and he was able to prevent himself from falling because he had that quick reflex.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So sometimes it's even just those little things, those little experiences that can be so powerful for people.
Yeah. Because if you think about it, just that small moment of him potentially falling, and he was able to catch himself and keep his balance and not fall, that potentially saved him from potentially having to go to the hospital or have surgery or whatever it happened to be. So absolutely. Yeah, I mean, it seems like a small thing, but it's actually a ripple effect, and it makes a big difference.
It does. It does. I had one other lady that she suffered a lot of congestion in her nasal passage, and there's a simple practice that we do to help open up the large intestine, creating these little heating pads with the pads just below the thumb, and rubbing along from the nostril up to just in between the eye, and creating that warmth, and then some acupressure, some massage. And she said, she didn't need any of those over-the-counter medications. So that was.
So whatever that is that you're talking about, I need that. Because I have had sinus issues my whole life. So even if it's not like hay fever season, even if it's not allergy season, I still have to take allergy meds every single night before I go to bed. Otherwise I can't breathe.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that'll be something I'll be asking you about later.
Absolutely.
Because it's something that it's not life-threatening, right? It's not something that is affecting my life in a super negative way. But at the same time, it's literally the only medication that I take, which is my allergy medication. Nice. That's it. Like, that's the only thing I take. But it's like, it would be amazing to be able to not have to take that, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you read the book called Breathe or Breath? James Nestor.
I have not.
James Nestor. It's an amazing story of his transformation, because he had a lot of breathing issues as well, and a lot of the research and the journey that he went through. And just even, it's amazing how we've all as a collective come to the point that the physical structure of our face has changed so much, just even due to the foods that we are now eating.
Yeah.
And how that has caused restriction in the nasal passages. So it's a great book, but our breathing, our breath practices are so important, to help with that issue.
100%. Yeah. And that's the interesting thing too, is that it does have an effect on my breath work practice, because there have been certain practices that I haven't even tried because I'm like, well, if I can't breathe through my nose right now, I can't do it anyway. Right. So I have a tendency to gravitate towards the breath work that is only through the mouth, or basically if I'm having congestion issues, like maybe I'll only be able to breathe through one nostril, So
Yes.
it is something that is hindering to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
Now that our listeners have a little bit more of an understanding of what Qigong is, let's say they want to get started in a practice. What would you recommend?
I believe that direct transmission is the best way to learn Qigong, because when you're in that setting, you have the synergy of the group. The instructor is able to, watch you in your practice and kind of fine tune any alignment issues. Qigong is very gentle. So gentle. Anyone can practice it, and it's great. It's great for seniors because you can sit in a chair, and, you can stand whatever way you want, but it's really nice to be able to be there in that space and, get your questions answered. Some of your local community centers, perhaps the yoga studios, any of the wellness centers, some of our wellness centers that even offer acupuncture and osteopaths, some of them will have classes as well. So kind of reaching out locally to those places. I'm part of a worldwide group known as Zen Wellness. The head office is in Arizona, and I go back and forth for yearly training. They have immersions, usually a couple times a year. And we have online classes as well. We have a lot of support online. They have regular classes, both practices as well as learning about Qigong and the nuances, and, as a science as well. That would be my, where I would say that we be the best place to go to learn about Qigong. Now, if that's not possible, there are you can get some great DVDs. Ken Cohen is a great instructor, teacher.
Oh, great.
And so you could do some online, but I do believe that direct transmission is the best option.
And by direct transmission, you just mean like being in a group setting physically?
Absolutely. Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Got it. Before we get started into the meditation, into the practice, why don't you share with our listeners how they can get a hold of you if they want to join a practice in Nova Scotia with you, if they want to be informed about some of the retreats that you're doing? How can somebody get a hold of you?
The best way would be through my email. And I do have a website, actually, www.danasoul.ca, where you can learn what I have to offer and connect through email there as well. And we can go from there. So if you're local, you could come to my studio and be part of the group. And if not, if you're farther away, Zoom is always an option.
Great. And your email address is on your website?
It is.
Wonderful. That is Danasoul, so DANASOUL.ca.
Correct.
Just for those of you who are listening and may not have access to the show notes at this time, that information will be in the show notes as well. So we'll also put the link to Zen Wellness in the show notes as well, if you're interested in becoming a medical Qigong practitioner or instructor. Okay, so Melissa, why don't you walk us through what we're going to do today practically in terms of this practice?
Okay, so this is going to be a moving meditation. It's called the 6 healing sounds. And we're going to follow the regulating cycle so that each energy will support the next in the cycle. So we're going to focus on this set. As I mentioned, it's called the 6 healing sounds. And within each energy, we have a particular organ that we focus on. And each of the organs hold onto an emotion. So we're going to begin the cycle at the metal energy. And with metal energy, we focus on the large intestines and the lungs. The lungs tend to hold sadness and grief. So we want to release that from our bodies to help balance, have it create balance in our bodies. So with this energy, we use a white light. We imagine this white light coming into the lungs, and we exhale with the sound hiss, HISSS. Now, in a class setting, you can see my hands, my movements. So I'm going to try to guide you through this. You bring your hands out in front of you with your thumb and your index finger, create an L shape. And the other three fingers just kind of curl in a little bit towards your hand. Mm-hmm. So we'll begin with this one. We're going to inhale a white light into our lungs. And we exhale, push our hands out in front of us and say, yes. Yes. So we'll do that 3 times for each energy. And what we want to do is we want to bring in a pure light into the organs, and we want to release like a murkier color. So it would be more like a gray color. We're visualizing that we're releasing stagnant energy out of the organs. So once again, fingers in front of you, that L shape. Inhale white light into the lungs. Exhale. Once again, standing nice and tall, feet are grounded. We have our feet pressed against the floor. Spine is nice and tall. Chin is tilted slightly. Again, inhaling white light. Yes. Yes. From metal, we have water energy. With water energy, we're focusing on our kidneys and our bladder. We're going to bring in either a blue or a black light, and the sound is chew, CHUU. With my hands, I'm going to imagine that I'm kind of doing a breaststroke. So I bring my hands out and around to the kidneys, and that's when I expel the sound, CHUU. So it's, and we're helping to release fear from the kidneys. We want to release the fear. So we're going to bring in the blue light into the kidneys. Inhale blue light. Bring your hands all the way around to your kidneys and exhale. I'm going to do that 2 more times. And you want to try to bring the vibration all the way to the organs. Inhaling blue or black light. Once more. So from water, we move into wood energy. Water feeds the plants. And with wood energy, we focus on our gallbladder and our liver. And we're helping to release anger and resentment, any jealousies we might have out of the liver. We're bringing in a beautiful green light and then exhaling the murkier, stagnant chi. So we're going to take our right hand and place it over our head. So it's straight up. Palm faces heaven. The left hand, kind of the palm faces downward, and it's placed in front of the liver. So we're going to be lifting the diaphragm up, releasing off the liver. So the color is green, and the sound is SHIII. All right. So bring it.
And are we moving our hands at all, or no?
We're going to move our right hand towards the left. So we're kind of tilting towards the left side. We don't want to go forward. We don't want to go backwards. We want to imagine that there's a wall behind us, and we're just going to slide and stretch to the left side.
Okay.
So bringing a green light into the liver, inhaling, exhale, releasing anger and resentment. Deep breath in. Once more, deep breath in from the abdomen. And now just the opposite hand movements for the fire energy. So we bring that left hand overhead facing heaven. The right hand comes to the left side of the body, palm facing down. So for fire energy, we're working on the heart and the small intestine. And we're helping to release anxiety and overexcitement from the heart. We want joy. We want happiness, but we don't want it to be in excess. This one I find is the easiest to feel the vibration in the organ to bring that energy down. So the sound is Ha, H-A-A-A. And you can use a pink light or maybe even just a light red color. Nothing too bright because we don't want to create any access in the body. So let's take it.
Okay.
And we're going to shift our stretch to the right side this time. So inhale,
Okay.
light red. Exhaling. And deep breath in. On our inhale, feeling our belly expand like a balloon. Deep breath in. And one more energy of the 5 elements is earth energy. So we're focusing on the spleen and the stomach, helping to release worry out of these organs. The sound is Ho, H-O-O. And as I mentioned, we bring in a beautiful sunshine yellow. So we're going to bring our hands out to our sides. And as we inhale, we're going to bring the hands, place them over our belly, one hand on top of the other, and then we'll emit the sound. So let's bring in a beautiful yellow light into the belly, into the spleen and stomach. Bring those hands together, one on top of the others, to the middle of the dantian, and exhale. Kind of bring yourself forward as well, bending over. Inhaling, yellow light. Exhale, dropping forward. And once more, deep breath in. Now, I mentioned that we have the 5 element theory, and this is the six healing sounds. We have one more energy that is considered the energy of heaven, and that comes down through our bodies, down through the Tai Chi pole. Tai Chi pole begins at the top of your head and goes straight down through your body to the perineum. And we want to bring in a beautiful purple light in through our bodies and help regulate. So we're going to stand with our feet about shoulder width apart. And we are going to, what I call, draw down the heavens. So we're going to bring our hands out to the sides. And the sound is He, H-E-E. So let's begin to bring our hands up, inhaling this beautiful purple light. Our hands face the Bawe point, our crown of our head. And then we exhale, He. Feel that beautiful purple light filling the Tai Chi pole. Inhaling again, the hands rise, come up to the sides, palms face your body. Exhale, He. Once again, deep breath in, drawing that beautiful iridescent purple light. He. And set. And relax. So that's our 6 healing set that can be practiced all year round, every day if you want. There is an emotion that you're feeling that's kind of consuming you, then you can focus even just on that one energy to help release your body.
Yeah, I found that there were certain parts of my body where it seemed to flow much easier than it did in other parts. So I did feel like almost resistance in certain areas where, my mind started wandering. I couldn't quite get the movement to, go right or, something to that effect.
Yes.
So when you're having those types of experiences, is it just that those particular areas need more work or that they're not quite ready to release, or what do you find?
I think it's a really great idea that you can observe the energy to release, help it to unblock, because that's maybe where the space is in your body at that time that needs a little bit more love.
Yeah. So then would you recommend that in those spaces where, let's say I felt resistance or I didn't feel as much was releasing, that maybe you do those cycles more than 3 times in a day, or you just focus on it more as a whole?
You can certainly practice the whole set because it will help to keep the energy flowing through all the meridians. But if there is stuck energy somewhere, you can definitely practice that one particular set more often. We only did 3 repetitions,
Right.
but typically I would do like 7, 8 for each one.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's good to know.
Yes.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for going through that with us. I think it's very helpful for people to be able to do the practice in real time, obviously, with you, because you've been doing this for so long. You're the expert, and it's always helpful to have just a little taste of what it is like to do this kind of work. So then if it is resonating for somebody, then they can sort of explore that further. So, in terms of being able to mix this with other practices, so let's say somebody gets Reiki or somebody is doing other types of modalities, are there any contraindications for doing this type of work with other modalities?
That's the great thing about Qigong. Now, I have heard other Qigong masters with different types of Qigong that they don't want you mixing, and I'm not really sure why that is. But with medical Qigong, it's all about exploration of the body and what
Right.
your body needs in the moment. It's a preventative. We often say the pill for the condition that you might have got down the road. So,
Right.
it's an opportunity for you to take responsibility for your health care and, whatever other modalities there are that call you, then that's fine as well to incorporate it all. But this is an opportunity each day to take, even 10 minutes just to run those circuits, run the energy through the circuits, help them to flow. And I go for regular maintenance for acupuncture and crystal bed therapy. And, I love it. So just to sit back and relax. But this is my opportunity to be proactive in my health care and to maintain my body.
Yeah. The only thing that I've told my clients time and time again is that, it's fine to do various different modalities. You just, you need to make sure that if you're going to do it and you do have a lot to clear, that you allow yourself the time after the sessions to purge. So don't be scheduling 18,000 things over the weekend if you have just gotten a Reiki session and done some pretty heavy Qigong and gotten an Akashic record session. Like I would not recommend doing those all at the same time, because you're going to be purging a lot of energy and it's going to be rough. It's going to be a lot of energy to move through. So that's typically what I tell my clients, just because, moving through a ton of energy all at once can be really rough. You don't necessarily want to do that if you don't have to.
No, that's right. And there is a lot of processing. I find when I think of the different healing modalities, absolutely. I often suggest to my clients as well that give yourself time, even 48 hours to process what has been taking place in one of those in a private session, because I do offer higher realm healing.
Yeah.
But for Qigong, it's different. To be able to take a class or just to run the energy. Definitely with private sessions, I do suggest that individuals take time to journal, drink lots of water and take the time to allow the energy to move through and process that information.
Yeah, absolutely. And lastly, I wanted to ask you very briefly about what higher realm healing is. What is it exactly? That's another thing that you practice.
Right. Higher realm healing is a one-on-one energy work that brings you into alignment with the higher realms, and it brings healing and balance into the body. It's a very gentle and loving energy, as I mentioned earlier today. They all have a different feel to them, and I enjoy all the different aspects of Reiki and reconnective healing and all the different modalities that I've experienced throughout the years. This energy work, when a client comes to me, it is a one-on-one where we often may talk about what the individual may be looking for, the area that they're looking for healing in. And maybe they don't even ask or bring that up, but, I'll often share what things can take place, because there's so many things that happen in a session where you may have some fluttering of your eyes, or some vibrations or happening throughout your body, some warmth taking place, kind of moving down through your body and releasing stuck energy. So I've had some clients that have said to me afterwards, "Was anybody cooking here with curry?" Because those different senses are activated, and
Right.
some may hear bells or hear certain sounds. And not to say if none of that happens, that there's not an amazing healing taking place within the body, because sometimes there can just, the client doesn't experience any of that and comes away with an incredible experience. But there's a lot that can take place, absolutely, in a
Right. Beautiful. Okay. I want to thank you so much, Melissa, for joining me today and sort of giving us a very brief taste of medical Qigong. You mentioned you had been doing retreats prior to last year. You said that it's something that you will be doing potentially sometime in the near future. How do people find out about that?
You can also contact me through my website at Dana Soul.
Okay.
And I co-facilitate the weekend retreats with another friend who's a Reiki master and life coach. And we can certainly let you when the next Illuminate retreat will take place.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
I want to thank you for joining me today. And I look forward to walking this journey with you and pointing the way on your spiritual journey. If you are interested in learning more about me and the sessions that I do, feel free to go to my website at infinitesoullove.com. On all social media, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at Infinite Soul Love 1111. Hey, and if you feel called, I would love it if you could rate The Heart of You on whatever streaming service you're using, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Please take a moment, give it a review. It really does help the channel. Thanks so much.